All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. And thank you for joining us today for our admissions Panther Perspectives on club sports. So we have with us today Coach Bert Wicker. He is the head coach of rowing here at High Point University. And he'll be sharing with us some wonderful information about the club sports program, what it is, how you can participate. We ask that if you have any questions, feel free to put those into the chat. And at the end of Coach's presentation, we will make time to answer those questions. Thank you so much. And Coach Wicker, you are more than welcome to go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away.
Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. I'm here to talk a little bit about club sports at High Point University, how that is different than D1 sports or intramural sports, how you get involved, the scope of the program, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll start out with talking about how club sports is different than D1 sports. In D1 sports, we have 16 D1 teams. We compete, HPU competes principally in the Big South League, and those are the classic teams: basketball, volleyball, baseball, lacrosse, soccer, that sort of thing. If you're interested in D1 sports at HPU and haven't already been contacted by one of the by your sports specific coach, then I would urge that you go on the athletic website, find the email information for the coach you're interested in speaking with, and send them information about your sports history, et cetera, and then the D1 athletic department people will take care of that. Club sports are specifically for people who, well, really they're for anybody who wants to join a team in any of our applicable sports. But they are targeted at people who generally were high school athletes and want to continue with that, or want to look into exploring a different and new sport. We have, at the moment, I think we have 32 teams on campus, and in a moment I will oh, I see. Here we go. I'll hold on one second. I was wondering why there was no picture, but maybe we could. Yeah, there we go. So you don't have to watch too much of this. I'll switch to something in a moment. We have 32 teams on campus, and they encompass a huge spectrum of possibilities. All of the ball and field sports that you would normally expect, and you'll notice me looking away at another monitor to read a list of these items. All of the ball and field sports that you normally think about, basketball, volleyball, lacrosse, soccer, softball, et cetera, plus the track and field sports, gymnastics. We have swimming, we have sports like rowing, powerlifting, bass fishing, equestrian, golf, let's see, ice hockey, jiu-jitsu. I'm just looking over my list of things. Let's see, whatever, ultimate frisbee, a sport that is recent, new to HPU that has been a huge success, are esports. We can talk about that a little bit in a moment. And we encourage anybody who's interested in any sport to come give it a try. The way the sports, the thing that differentiates club sports from intramural sports is all club sports are coached. There is a generally a paid professional coach that coaches the sport. All sports are parts of a league, which implies that there are tournaments, games with other universities and schools, tournaments, championships, travel involved. All the sports are travel sports. They are, you will be playing generally for the ball and field sports and things like swimming and that sort of thing, you're generally competing with teams more or less in the local area within a 2 or 3 state area. But in a number of sports, ice hockey, rowing, equestrian, esports, the travel could be as much as the eastern half of the United States, certainly the East Coast. In rowing, the sport that I personally coach, we travel as far as from Boston to Florida. We have regattas in Atlanta, Nashville, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, etc. And these are all covered under the club sports umbrella. In order to get involved in club sports, the way that works is in a normal non-COVID impacted year, there is an event in the beginning of the season. In the beginning of the year, it's usually on the second or third day of classes once you get on campus, and it's called the Involvement Fair. And in that event is held in our student union Slane Hall. And in that event, every activity of any kind on campus is represented at the event. There are tables. There are 176 or so various clubs and or organizations on campus that encompass everything from Greek life to athletics to performance arts, just anything you can possibly think of. And in that day, you can go around to any activity that you're interested in, talk to members of the team, talk to the coaches if they're athletic teams or the sponsors or the et cetera, and find out what their requirements are, what it takes to be a part of that club or team, et cetera, and sign up there. And specifically for athletics, what you find out or when there are tryouts, what the scope of the tryouts might be. With regard to tryouts, every sport is a little bit different about how they do it. In general, tryouts are held a few days after school starts, so they can quickly determine who's going to be involved in the sport for that year. In some cases, baseball in particular, equestrian is another. There may even be tryouts prior to that first week of school because incoming freshmen get to campus a few days early, and they may start tryouts immediately. There are some sports that don't require tryouts. It's very sports specific, and once at that event, you can explore what that's about, or you can also email the coach and find out information about that particular sport. And I'll say, if you go to the High Point Club Sports webpage, on that webpage, click around on the webpage and you'll find listings for the sports, and you'll find rosters and coach information, emails for those people. So you are certainly welcome to email any of those coaches about specifics for their sport. Team sizes are, again, variable and dependent somewhat on the sanctioning body for the sport and also on how popular the sport is. Baseball, for instance, is one that is often very popular. We will generally have 100 to 125 people or so each semester who would like to be on the baseball team, and the baseball team is restricted by the conference that it's in to 35 members on the team. So the tryouts for baseball can be quite intense. On the other hand, other sports, rowing, for instance, is really not limited by size at all. We row in 8-man boats and 4-man boats and 2-man boats, et cetera, et cetera. So we have opportunity to put virtually as many people on the water as are interested in rowing. So we generally have 60 or 65 people on the team, and are not limited at all in the tryouts. Another aspect of club sports is you are often free to, in many of the sports, and in fact most of the sports, they encourage people who have never tried the sport before to come give it a try. you might have been a fabulous baseball player in high school or a track person and decided you just want to try something else. And, athletic involved, want to give it a go. And generally, club sports are very welcoming and open for that. Once you are on the team, again, with few exceptions, whether you make the team or not is really not. It's not too hard, difficult in most cases to become a member of the team. But having said that, these are sports teams, and we do play a competitive schedule. So at some point, there is a process by which each coach chooses the people that will be, the starting roster of the team, et cetera. If it's a ball and field sport, in things like esports and those sorts of things, everybody who's interested in playing and wants to be on the team can be on the team. Another quick aspect, and I'm sort of really rushing through this, but we'll leave time for questions and that sort of thing. Another aspect of team sports is there is a fee, and those fees range on the low end from $200 a year, not a semester, a year, to a max to on the high end, a maximum of $1,500 per year. A few of the sports, ice hockey is one, rowing is one, equestrian is one, have higher fees than say the ball and field sports, because this sport itself carries a high overhead. In ice hockey, for instance, we have to rent ice time for the team to practice, and in the case of equestrian and ice hockey and rowing, there's a lot of travel involved because the regattas or the ice hockey meets, et cetera, are not necessarily local to North Carolina. With regard to travel, you travel under the auspices of High Point University. So you travel on High Point University buses, or other High Point University means. There's not a situation in which you're driving yourself back from a late night ball game in Tennessee to get back to High Point. That doesn't happen. You're being transported by HPU drivers in HPU vehicles. If there is overnight accommodation involved, that is covered by your dues. And in general, your competition uniforms, not true again for ice hockey because those uniforms are so unique and specific, but in general, your competition uniforms, your jerseys or racing uniforms, et cetera, are also covered by your dues. So the dues are basically a great deal. It really is just a fee that covers the administrative costs of being a member of the league and all of the things that are involved in doing that. Club sports, again, as I said, is coached, it's travel-based, and it's competitive among other universities and schools around. Examples would be baseball, for instance, competes with UNC and Duke, NC State, Carolina. In rowing, we compete with everybody from Harvard and Yale to the North Carolina schools, to essentially every school. Our Southeastern Regional regatta typically has 65 or 70 different universities involved in it, and will have 2,000 or 3,000 rowers at the regatta. So, they're big. They're big sports, big deals. It's a great opportunity to take your the years you've spent in athletics. If you're coming out of high school as a high school varsity athlete, you spent a great deal of your life practicing and working on honing those sets of skills. And club sports are a great way to keep doing those. We also have another athletic venue on campus, which are intramural sports, and those are exactly what they say they are. They're intramural sports. They are run by the students via websites, sign-up website procedure, and they're literally what you make them. You can take, say, your hall of the dorm, put together 6 or 8 people, and decide you want to do a flag football game and join and go to the club sports, the intramural sports website, and get up a flag football game against another dorm, or for the next day, for the next afternoon, that sort of thing. Club sports are much more organized than that. Most club sports teams have 2 practices per week, led by the coaches. Some will have a third additional practice, often led by team captains, or not necessarily led by the coaches. Practices generally last an hour and a half, those 2 times a week. Competitions are generally on the weekend, and for the ball and field sports, which are contested mostly in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia area. For instance, you might be playing, Elon or UNC, or et cetera, et cetera. There's no overnight involved. You just travel the morning of the event, have the event, and travel back. Ice hockey, rowing, some equestrian, some of the others, and generally the season championship matches will be held wherever they need to be. We've recently had events held in Pennsylvania and Alabama, again, Boston, Philadelphia, et cetera. So there is travel involved in those. There has not been any difficulty being allowed to travel via your academics. Most of the club sports know their schedules in a non-pandemic year. Everybody knows their schedules, who they're going to be playing with at the beginning of the semester. That information is posted so that you can let your professors know that you're going to be out of town on XYZ date. And then it's, of course, up to you to make sure that you're academically prepared to be able to take that time off and attend the event. So I think those are a lot of and probably talked too long, but I think those are the high points of club sports, and I will turn it back over to the moderators and deal with whatever questions we have.
Thank you so much, Coach Wicker. That was wonderful information, and we greatly appreciate you sharing all of that with our students who are here today. We do have a few questions that have come in during the presentation. So first, do you have to try out or sign up every year for a club sport?
Again, the broad answer is yes, you have to try out at least the first time. And generally after that, you don't have to. Again, in a sport that is that often has a high number of applicants versus a few number of positions, baseball is the one that really comes to mind. You may have to retry out every year, but in general, you don't have to do that. And again, tryouts. Club sports encourage people to change and give things a try. And again, I speak from rowing, since that's the one I know intimately about. 75 or 80% of our team have never rowed before they came to college. They were generally athletic. They did other things, but they have never rowed before they came to college and our university, and are looking for something new and different and something to give it a try. And that happens in a number of sorts. I know the swimming team has had people that were athletic in other sports and given that a try. But generally, there are some sort of tryouts that are more or less sport specific. And if you need, if you want more information than that, just give the coach, drop them an email. Or if you can't find their email address, you can send me an email and I'll get it to the right person. So next question.
Okay, great. And this one just came in a few moments ago. Are club sports even still able to really be active right now with COVID and the pandemic going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's another one that is very, very sport specific. We were completely shut down for the fall. Nobody did anything. We were allowed to, we were able to have, I mean, HPU's done a really good job with their COVID preparedness and their contact tracing, et cetera, et cetera. And on the rowing team, for instance, we've only had one instance of COVID and only 2 people that have had contact tracing out of the whole since last year. So it's just beginning to reemerge. In fact, most of the sports, a number of the sports, are really waiting on early March decisions on how much competition they'll be allowed this year. So we know in rowing that we have at least one event that is still able to be held, and we are planning on attending that event. But it's on a sport by sport basis based on what the sanctioning body for that sport has decided, and it's still very much up in the air right now. So next.
Okay, great. Well, our other questions you actually answered during the presentation, which is absolutely awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today